My name is Rabbi Tuvia Bolton, and I want to speak today about the difference between a human being and an animal. Exactly what is the difference between the two of them? At first glance, the question is not such a burning one because everyone can see. A human being can create, a human being can speak, a human being can write, a human being has the power of thought. But really there's an essential difference that's much deeper. Because in a way, an animal can be taught to do those things, and even a computer. Nowadays, computers have the ability to create, to write, to make up new ideas, to solve problems. But one major difference between an animal and a human being is that a human being has what we call sense of values. Sense of values means that a human being can tune into something, can tune into truth, which is higher than himself, and because of this, even go against his own nature. For instance, a person lives in communist Russia, and everyone in the country believes in communism, and because of this, they're turning in their parents to the government, they're turning in anyone that might have some money to the government, and one person thinks to himself, this is wrong, I'm not going to do this. One of the main differences between an animal and a human being is that a human being can feel responsibility. An animal has no responsibility to anything. According to nature, a lot of animals have a connection to their children, they protect their children. The male will provide for the family. But this is not because they feel responsibility. That happens to be their nature. Of course, there are psychiatrists and psychologists that disagree with this. But in fact, responsibility is one of the most human things that there is. There was a great psychiatrist. His name was Professor Viktor Frankl. The Lubavitcher Rebbe told many people that his was the only true method of psychiatry that there was in the world. The only one that brought a person to a higher realization of what a human is, and that relies on the humanity of a human being. He tells a story in his book, this Professor Viktor Frankl. He wrote a lot of books, but in one of the books that he wrote, which is called Man's Search for Meaning, he writes a story that when he was in Auschwitz, he was in a concentration camp. He was in various concentration camps in the course of 3.5, 4 years. As one day he came across, in 2 different episodes, men that said that they wanted to commit suicide. In each case, he asked them, why? Why did they want to commit suicide? In a way, it's a bit of a foolish question because in Auschwitz there were millions of reasons not to live. Every moment was torture. It was cold. There was no hunger. There was no food. There was death all around. Cruelty. Who wants to live in a world like that? It was an ocean of death. The natural impulse was just to jump in. Viktor Frankl, on the same day when he was in Auschwitz, he happened to come across 2 people that were about to commit suicide. And he asked them, being that he was a psychiatrist, and being also that he had made it part of his life's work to prevent people from committing suicide. When he was in the University of Austria, he set up a suicide prevention center. This was in the early 30s or the late 20s. And amazingly enough, in the time that he had the center, absolutely no one committed suicide, none of the pupils. And you can see why from this story. So both men said that they wanted to put an end to their lives. And he said, why? And both of them said, because we have nothing to expect from life. And to both of them he gave the same answer. Maybe you're right, maybe you have nothing to expect from life, but maybe life has something to expect from you. In other words, suddenly he changed the picture from their only directing their life from their inner feelings to a bigger picture of what life itself is demanding from them, is drawing them out. That's called responsibility. Both of them thought, of these men, both of them thought, and one realized that yes, he did have a book that he was started and he would like to finish. Another one said that he had a daughter that was living in America that he would like to meet. And so it was, each one found something concrete, something worthwhile in the future to pull him out of the misery and the smallness and the egocentric view of the present. This idea of looking at the world from the big point of view and having the ability to overlook or even ignore your own personal feelings. In our story that I just told, it were negative feelings, but there are also feelings that don't seem to be so negative, but really are. For instance, licentiousness, lying, cheating. A person, when he does it, seems to him that he's making a profit. He's not putting an end to his life. He's increasing. He's adding on to his life. But really, this type of selfishness is the type of thing that divides people. And in the end, divides a person against his own self. Because once a person achieves a small goal and has no big way of looking at the world, if so, life remains empty. He's done nothing for his soul. He's maybe accomplished something for his body temporarily, and maybe even for his psyche, but not for his soul, for his meaning and purpose in life. The first person to bring this into the world was a man called Abraham. Abraham was the first Jew, Avraham. Originally his name was Avram, which means a very high father. He was a very, very high intellectual person. And God changed his name to Avraham, the father of all mankind. God said you must spread the message that you have to all mankind. What is his message? That there's a creator, as we said before, and this creator creates everyone. And he creates everyone from love, and no one is ever alone. But every human being has a responsibility to life, has a responsibility to all of mankind to make the world a better place, even by means of one good deed, one more good word, one more good thought, one bit of positive attitude, to create something positive, to appreciate something, or even to consider the world in its totality. Even a person that's in a terrible place like Auschwitz, with a proper attitude and seeing the big picture, or at least believing that there is such a thing as a big picture, he can say, what does life expect from me? Certainly not to put an end to my life. On the other hand, we see that a person without this proper attitude, the Lubavitcher Rebbe once wrote in a letter that a person without the proper attitude can be a bigger enemy to himself than all of his actual enemies are. Where do we see this? From the first man. The Bible tells us there was a person called Adam, and God created him with his own hands. Adam knew that he was God's creation, and the whole world was his. He had no enemies, he had no neighbors, he had no government, he had no problems, he didn't have to pay any taxes. His wife was the only woman in the world. He had no competition, he had no one to hate. And nevertheless, Adam only saw the small picture. He looked at the tree and he saw that the fruit, God told him not to eat from the fruit. He looked at the fruit and saw that it was good, it would be good for him. He thought that the outcome would be good for him. It would be an experience. He would learn from it, and he ate from the fruit. In other words, there could be people that were in Auschwitz that if they had the proper attitude, they could survive and even flourish. And there were Adam, who had the whole entire world was his, unlike the people in Auschwitz that everything had been taken from them. But without the proper attitude, he was not happy. Not only did he not flourish, but he brought death and destruction to the whole world. This was the message of Abraham, to come and fix the sin, the mistake of Adam, to come and return meaning to the world, to put meaning of life to the world. And instead of looking at the world every minute I'm coming closer to the end, to think every instant is a brand new miracle of life, a new future. The future is calling. The future is promising. The future is filled with meaning. This is really the essence of Judaism.
JewishTV.media